Where's that voice coming from? From nowhere? Ka-kank. Oh man, I did it again. I thought I got rid of that. Hold on a second. It's all right.
It's from inside the ka-kank.
The ka-kank's coming from inside the house.
The ka-kank's coming from inside the ka-kank.
Guys, welcome back to your favorite video scope live production of Pencil to Pencil, the non-award winning weekly live cast brought to you by 3 expert cartoonists. Well, hello, welcome back. Guys, we did it again. If you see us on your video scope, that means
you're trapped.
That's right, you're trapped.
You're trapped. You've been trapped by the nor'easter.
Oh man, let's do some introductions, you guys. My name is JAMAR NICHOLAS. I'm your first host. It is my pleasure to be here with you again. I wear many hats besides this beanie. I am on the board of the National Cartoonist Society and also the Philadelphia chapter. Sure, go Birds, go Phils, go Fightins, as they call them. I don't know if you knew this, Steve. The Fightin' Phillies. Then they'll say go Fightins, which I think that's very Philadelphia, isn't it? Go Fightins. I also have a graphic novel series at Scholastic Graphics. Leon and the Big Problem is my newest book. Will be out November 3rd. Steve, what should they do about it?
Cop it, why don't you?
Cop it, why don't you? Yes, cop it. Cop all of them.
When can we cop the cover preview?
Oh, yeah. I'll gin it up before the show's over. I'll put it on the screen. Thanks for asking, Mike. I would be remiss if I did not introduce my cohort, co-conquistador and co-conspirator. You know him as that man walking up the side of the internet superhighway with a melodic tinkle at his back.
Tinkling. He's always tinkling. He's always like a pocket full of tinkle.
You would not like this man if he was angry. So if you catch a flat and if he rolls up with a jack and you're just like, I'm sorry, Steve, I'm gonna just kill this rim.
Don't ask him to pull over. No, don't.
Don't ask. Don't ask. Don't tell. It's Stone Cold Steve Conley.
Wow, that was a journey. Gentlemen, it is so good to see you. Hello, my name is Steve Conley. You probably would like me when I'm angry. I'm not gonna lie. I'm likable. I'm the creator of your 17th favorite webcomic, The Middle Age, which you can read at middleagecomic.com. It's over on the Webtoons, on the Tapas, on the Go Comics. And I also make the TTRPG stuff. So if you play the Dungeons and the Dragons, you have less than 48 hours to back Wildest Shape over on Backer Kit. That ends Friday at 4 p.m. It's my first crowdfunding campaign over on Backer Kit. So far, so great. Check it out. But I would be remiss if I didn't introduce Dark Hawk's daddy, the Tower of Power, the man of the hour, too sweet to be sour. He does 2 daily comic strips. That's right. 2 daily comic strips. That's like what? Half of the newspaper?
And the retirement home?
The magnificent, the mercurial, the marvelous Mr. Mike Manley.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Yes, I do 2 strips, and some days they're very long. Today was one of those long days. Up early, and then I had to get the strip. I had to get the judge in, and then I had to, my kitchen's a mess. I need to do a load of laundry. Nobody ever really talks about that. It's like when you're on those long deadlines, it's like everything else gets shoved. If you're not married or you have a significant other, you got to do everything yourself. And even when I used to have my pets, especially my dogs, they were funny because even more than cats, although my cats did. My dogs always had a schedule. It's like, oh, is it getting dark? Oh, it's time for me to eat. So they would come in the studio and, they would especially my late dog Buster would actually stand in the door. He'd just stand there why are you still there? Why are you not going to sleep? And he'd yawn, and he'd go across and they would both, Buster and Shazam would go across and they would like, you're not going to bed? We're going to bed. They go get in there, go crawl right up on top of the bed and just lay there and like look at you and then go right to sleep.
I love it. Yeah, they kind of break up your day in a different way too, right?
Like your dog, Cosmo, he's always coming in. He's like, yo, we going for a walk?
Yeah, what's up? he's a little short of Snoopy with the dish in his mouth, but it's like it's real. Like they know what time it is. You need to stop messing around and make things happen. Activate.
Yeah. Fetchin, my cat, Fetchin he'd go and like start panging his bowl, just knock it around, So I got a bigger bowl, so he couldn't knock it around.
That's fantastic. Guys, welcome back to the podcast. What up, Tristan says cat schedules are very real. It's whatever they want. That's it. Guys, welcome back to the show. I'm very excited to be here with you again. If you joined us last week, you know that I made a declaration at the end of that live cast where I said we'd have a special guest, Dan Panozia, would be on the show. Dan had scheduling conflicts, so we will have him on in the near future. But not to be overshadowed, we have a really awesome episode for you tonight. Where I gotta clear the screen because we need the space, Mike Manley. We need every inch of screen. Tonight we're doing some live inking. That's right. It's been a while since we've done any type of like live drawing, but I think we made that graphic because we were doing some live drawing. I can't remember where that started. But hold on, I just gotta show it one more time. This is so funny. I love this drawing. It's hilarious. So maybe Mike, you want to kind of tell us what we're doing tonight, and we'll just kind of get right to it.
Okay. Well, I thought I would do a inking demo because I think inking is something that, well, since it's the final stage of the art, the drawing part of comics, and it's something that a lot of people still really struggle with, right? And inking has also changed. I think inking has changed as much, if not more, than coloring, right? And the inking really has, although now it battles, I think, is with the coloring. The inking can really save something or destroy something, as any penciler will tell you. If your inker cannot draw very well, they tend to lessen the art. And I think inking is also misunderstood because everybody understands drawing, but a lot of people don't really understand that inking is drawing, but there's also interpreting. There's a lot of interpretation that goes on because I always liken it to a conductor, right? Because you could have a piece of music, classical piece of music, let's say, or even a modern piece of music. And then the conductor is the one who interprets it. It goes, oh, we're going to have the woodwinds here. This is going to be loud. This is going to be soft. This is going to be fast. This is going to be slow. Right. It's really the same thing. And, I come from the era where growing up in the 60s and the 70s, the penciler, like the tightest penciler, was still actually fairly loose compared to people now who actually pencil like the inker inks. Like the pencils are really, really, really tight. And I think probably in the late 70s, the early 80s, penciling really started to change. Like people like John Byrne drew pretty tight. And then like Michael Golden drew very tightly. And then the people that came after them, who were influenced by them, drew even tighter, because a lot of guys were drawing, a lot of artists were drawing in the pencil stage as tight as Terry Austin would ink John Burns pencils. Like the line weights were really all put in. The pencils are very clean and very tight, almost like if you just adjusted the contrast.
Mhm.
And now I think we sort of exist in this sort of, let's talk about this the other day. It's like styles narrowed, as we talked about in the previous episode in the 90s. And now I think that they've opened back up. So still the inking has to really support the drawing. And it's really common to see a lot of younger artists who are actually better at one or the other. They're better at drawing than they are at inking, right? And I was probably a little bit better at inking than drawing. And I also today, I put up on my Facebook page my first real comic book crit. I reposted it from my blog. It had been up on my blog, but I got a really great crit by George Freeman of some Captain Canuck samples that I did right out of high school. And I came across that today and I was thinking, you know, this is sort of this podcast is a paying forward of what George did for me, right? Because I just made up my own story, and I sent it in because I really like Captain Canuck, and so I wanted to see if I could get some work. And he really took the time and went over my samples and sent me back a really wonderful crit. And so when I think about it, I've been paying back or paying forward what George did, like 1979, 1980, somewhere in there. That's what the magazine was. That's what this podcast is. That's what this tonight is me paying forward the kindness that he did by giving me a crit. So
That's great.
Yeah, that was really sweet.
You know, I think if you're a nice person and you respect the person you're writing to, you're familiar with the person's work, and you know, also the difference is like you can get immediate feedback now. I mean, I did those samples, which probably, you know, took me a couple of weeks, and then you mail it, and you don't know if you'd ever hear from the person again, right?
Right.
So it's not like you go to their Facebook page.
Slide to the DMs, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So you didn't have to worry about formatting and, you know, all that stuff, you know.
I sent photocopies to Steve Ditko and to Dan Adkins.
Wow.
And to Steve Rude. Early in all three of them responded. Lovely.
Really? What did Ditko say?
I also asked him to do a pinup. He was not interested. I think I said some things that might have come across as epically anti-capitalist in my story, so I could see why he would not want to do that. I didn't really understand his politics back then, but he had very nice things to say about Pat Boyette, who was another cartoonist who had a pinup in the book. Yeah.
Oh, that's
very kind of him.
Yeah. I think I told this before. I actually talked to Steve Ditko on the phone once.
No,
you just called the studio. Is that it?
Yeah, he actually was in the phone book.
Yeah, that's old school. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I called him because I had done that story with Al, and I thought, well, we'll get our part of the art back. But then I thought, well, let's see if I could, you know, buy if he was interested. But he said, oh no, I never sell my art. And we talked for a few minutes. You know, now you wish, boy, I had we had an iPhone back then or something. You could have recorded it or whatever.
You could have FaceTimed though.
Exactly. Yeah. Who the hell is this?
S. Ditko.
Yeah, but yeah, it was because you're sort of like nervous and excited at the same time,
Nice.
But
that's great.
So you guys carry the conversation for a second.
So Mike, this is funny. Our good buddy, Eternity Forever. One of my favorite things was it Ron Mars or whoever we had on the show. I got him to say that. Eternity Forever said J. Scott Campbell just posted a cover for Mask. Mask is hot again. That old cartoon from the 80s on his socials, and his pencils are so tight. Also, his inks look fantastic. Did he ink himself? He used to have Alex Garner inking him. I don't know these days. He could have just used his pencils. They were so complete. That's something to be said about the art of inking in modern times, Mike. Maybe you can speak to that. Because back in the day, inking served a purpose that may not carry the same weight anymore. Do you agree, disagree?
Yeah, I think, well, here, let me.
No, I wasn't expecting that.
Well, you clearly angered him.
He threw like the smoke egg down and just disappeared. I'll show you guys. I'll leave the show.
Well, let me ask you, Jamar. When you're inking your own work, how tight are your pencils? I mean, do you basically, because I know you also have to, you've got like editorial hoops to jump through. How tight do those things need to be for purposes of review and for your own purposes for inking?
Well, everybody looks at my thumbs, and then they're very. Hold on a second. Hold on, Mike. I'm coming. They're very. No, I wouldn't say. I mean, thumbs are thumbs, right? But when I get to the inking stage, this is something that I've added myself. Hey, Mike, let me finish this little piece here. That I'm basically going over my thumbs, like I blow up my thumbs and then kind of put them into the format of the PSD files. And then I try to do tight pencils. And if you've known me for a long time, my tight pencils ain't that tight. But since the last couple of books, I have a new layer called tighter pencils, where I'm actually, because I kind of beat myself up. I feel like I spent my career making work that felt rushed. We all have our own thing, and I feel like my work always looked, because I gotta go to work in the morning, right? So all my stuff felt like I gotta go to work in the morning. So now that I've had the time to kind of put more energy into slowing down and being laborious with it, that's where tighter pencils came from. So I'm thinking of all that stuff and just trying to make the stuff look a lot better than it used to. I hope that
when you get to the inking, do you want those questions resolved? Because I always think of those lines as being kind of like uncertainty, and then you basically put the ink work being the.
No, you know what? Nowadays, I want it to. I mean, especially with the volume of stuff, like when you're doing like 100 pages, you just don't want any things left up to chance. Like, I need to put it on the paper in the first place so I can just knock it out. Thanks, you guys. What a great question. Hey, how you doing, Mike?
Okay, just a second. It's giving me a fit. An airplane flew over from the government, I think, and like janked my.
Drop some EMP crystals.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Hold on.
Drops of so our buddy Tim Fielder, what up, Tim, says, I worked once with Richard Corbin, did breakdowns for the soft porn sci-fi mag, thanks Tim, called Forbidden Zone. He changed everything, but upon showing him my work, he said I would have fit in with the heavy metal crew. Hate I lost that email. That's cool. Everybody's got like a little bit of history behind them. That's what I really love about cartooning over the decades. Everybody kind of crosses paths at some point. That's also, okay, Mike, I think I see it up. Steve, can you help Mike out when he's ready?
Are you ready to add that to the screen, Mike?
Yeah, you can add this to the screen.
I'm gonna close the chat. You guys talk off screen. Thanks.
Okay, so this is a Batman page I did right when I was starting. So you can see everything's there, but I left a lot for myself to do when I inked it. Like putting in all the blacks and everything. So I wanted to keep the energy. And this is back when I used to do small layouts, and then I would put them in my artograph and project it down, and then do my pencils from that, which is how I learned from people like Neil Adams used to do that. So this is, pre-digital. So you would a lot of people would have a projector, or you could blow it up and put it on the light box. And then let's see here. And then I can bring this.
You say that's loose or open for interpretation. That seemed tight to me. That looked great.
That's very loose. And then you can bring that up.
Got it.
And then this is the pencils. So that I allowed myself or forced myself to do some drawing in the ink stage, right? So it wasn't literally tracing the pencils. It was drawing over my pencils. So because I felt like it added an extra energy, but it made me think about where I'm going to put the black. Right, where I'm going to put the black. And so I left a lot of room to go in and just like put these big black and use the black as a way to sort of lead the eye. That's the great thing about Batman with the cape. Right? And then I had a little splatter. And the pain they asked with that was that you'd have to use masking fluid.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you have the toothbrush thumb technique?
Yeah, right. So you'd add the masking fluid, you'd mask off or tape off stuff. And then you get the toothbrush and you take a brush and put like a little bit of ink on it. And then your hand would be completely nuts. Right. It would be completely nuts. So
that's fantastic.
So you can go back to
Got it.
Okay. So you can see how much room there was and how much fun it is, right? To go in and to be able to draw and it sort of invent, right? So I was drawing the stuff tight enough that I felt like I wouldn't, get lost, right? And then
and that was all just because some people don't have the context. That was all ink on paper. That was all. Was how big was the original, Mike? 10 by 15?
10 by 15, right? So that was 10 by 15. And what do we have up on the screen now?
Got it.
Okay. So this is me inking Michael Golden, who penciled. His pencils are so perfect that it didn't look like you touched it. It looked like it was like printed out of like it just came out of the printer, right? And I had a lot of fun, but it was also really difficult because his work is perfect. It's like you don't see any smudges. You don't really see any like construction lines. It's almost like he went, we're just like, on, but he was always one of my favorite artists because his work really had this amazing, loose, organic quality to it. Everybody is such a cool individual character. And look how he makes this building with this twisty perspective. And like, but it's not perfect, right? I mean, it's not, looks like it's drawn by a machine, right? There's a little warp. I always felt like everything he drew was made out of like cartoon clay or something, right? And so that Batman stuff I inked with a 108, Hunt 108 and a brush. This I mostly inked with either a Pigma or a Hunt 102. And because I wanted to, because it has almost like an animated quality to it. It was like, his work always reminded me of almost like a combination of like Russ Heath and anime or something, you know, because he drew all these buildings and all this architecture and all these machines, and he drew everything so perfectly. But it was all like this car. It's like cartoony. You can see the kind of squash and everything was had a little squash and stretch to it, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things I loved about inking was that I got to ink different people who didn't draw anything like me. And I learned a lot by doing that. So by inking someone like Mike Golden or Brett Blevins or I inked a lot of different, like 27 issues of Shazam. So I got to ink Pink Cross. I got to ink Bill Kane. I got to ink some Kurt Swan. I love being able to ink because you could study how somebody else worked. And that was another way of sort of like learning. Because when you're inking something, you're drawing over that person's drawing. So you kind of get to learn a little bit of their drawing, which, like I said, in here is very different than my drawing. Right? And then I remember I was at a convention, this easily over 10 years ago, and I remember Walt Simonson was on a panel with Mike Golden, and Walt came up afterwards and he said, Mike Golden was talking about how much he loved this job because this was an issue of Birds of Prey, and Golden was not very fast, or maybe he was fast, but he was doing other stuff. But anyway, the issue was late, so he was supposed to ink it himself. And he said that this was one of his top 2 or 3 favorite ink jobs ever. So that made me feel really good to be able to.
So when you inked, knowing that this was originally thought to be his own inks on top of this, did you look at his work to ink like him, or did you say, no, this is me, I'm gonna, my voice will be on this? We heard it.
No, I tried to, since I knew there were some pages that he was inking, I tried to make my inks look like his inks.
Sure.
I mean, I don't have any originals by him, but I'm very familiar with his work. In fact, I think I had some full-size Xeroxes that I'd gotten years ago. I think there was a Superman issue or something that he did, and then there was another issue of something that he did, but I don't know whether it was ever finished. And part of that was inked by him, and then part of it I think might have been inked by Terry Austin. So I was trying to ink to make it look like his inks. And when I was in Al Williamson's studio, and sometimes I would help him on a deadline, like ink some John Romita stuff, I would try to ink like him. Right? So I was always pretty good at mimicking what other people. I used to really study this. I mean, I was like a real scientist about inking, and I would study people like the difference between Dick Giordano inking Neil Adams and Neil Adams inking Neil Adams, because Dick was more of a brush inker and Neil was more of a pen inker. So I really got into being able to look at someone like John Buscema, who I loved, and then how each one of my favorite inkers would interpret his stuff, right? So like, here's a Buscema page. And so this is what I talk about, like in the classic era of penciling. It's all there, but it's not tight. It's tight, but not overly tight, right? So that meant that the inker had to be able to come in. You know, look, those lines are all sort of freehand, right? A lot of stuff is sort of freehand. This is what I would call like that, what I talked about, like with a casual drafting. Right? And he's drawing this rustic old bar. So there's a lot of, it's there, but you can see, I think this was inked by Tom Palmer. And they worked together for years. Why is this?
Yeah, so much interpretation on that face of that bespectacled figure in the lower left. There's all that additional lighting and
you know, Tom had a lot of extra shadows.
If you're watching this episode on your phone, what are you doing right now? Go to your front room TV and put this on.
So, you know, this is the era that I grew up in, right? I was looking at and learning from people like this, you know, especially in the beginning. So in this era, the inker had to really be able to draw. Right, the inker had to really be able to draw.
So, Mike, I have a question. So, in the case of, and I'm not saying names, there are a couple of famous workhorses from that era that were known as ruiners. Right, the job got in, but holy crap, what happened to his face, man? Like, what's the miscommunication? Is that because the inker was not a good draftsman? Did they overinterpret things? Like, how does a bad ink job happen on clean art?
So this is, again, here's a case of, this is me inking Gil Kane, who is one of my favorite artists. And this is later in his career, not too long, actually, probably before he passed away. But he was very structural. And so it was a lot of fun for me to be able to go in and, you know, try to make it look like what I thought good Gil Kane inking was, right? So a lot of pencilers like Kane didn't put a lot of black on their work. It was more structural, so it was sort of up to the inker to add a lot of the extra black, right? And so I learned from, you know, looking at like what Wally Wood or Klaus Janson or Romita did on his stuff. And then, so you can see, here's a Gil Kane page. You can see what his pencils look like. So it's there, but
look at my man coming through the window like,
right, exactly. Right? But there's a lot of room for you to be able to go in, like how much black, he put a little black on Daredevil, right? But there's a lot of room for you to be able to go in and dress this up, you know. And his drawing is very structural, so his lighting is very structural and not very atmospheric, I would say, right? As opposed to Gene Colan, right, who is all atmosphere, right?
Yeah. How do you ink that?
Exactly. Well, you're going to find out, because I think tonight I'm going to ink a Gene Colan page.
Fantastic.
Right. And I think one of the best series ever was that run of Dracula that he and Tom Palmer did. I like it even better than their work on Doctor Strange. because I think Colin was really good at doing this, atmospheric stuff, and Palmer was one of the best inkers ever in the business. Just exquisite pen and ink line control. On top of being one of the nicest guys ever. But yeah, there's a lot of interpretation, side of the pencil. How do you deal with that?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
That's very different than that.
Yeah.
Right? This is all very, and there's not a lot of line weight indicated, just a little bit here or there. That's really different.
Yeah.
You've got to decide, how am I going to cross hatch this? It's all this gray. Like you have this gray on the right at the bottom that figures, and then you have it sort of going away into this fog. You see like this lamppost as opposed to whatever that shape is. You really got to have your pen and ink techniques down and really be able to do a variety of texture. And so I really loved his stuff as a kid. Right, here's another really great earlier page. All right. Well, maybe this is a later page. But just look at all that, and then talk about page personality, as we were talking about the previous couple of weeks. He always had that kind of weird, everything is sort of slanting and twisted and warping. It was like, if you look at like just this part of this panel, you could tell that was Gene Colan. His use of space, his interpretation of space is really unique. Just the perspective, that weird, twisty, warpy perspective on that gun. If I saw that, I would know that's Gene Colan.
Mike, Notorious JRD says, crosshatch, Mike, or dry brush?
That would depend. If I was working in like the Marvel black and white magazine that was slightly bigger and all in black and white, you could probably do some dry brush. But on a regular comic book page, back in the day, you faced the fact that the printing was fugitive. You never knew. You might get a really good copy. We all have that in our old comic collection. Like, wow, this issue's printed really good. And then like you have another issue of Spider-Man, like, whoa, what, the ink is the stuff is off register.
Right.
So I would be inclined to do not a lot of dry brush. I would probably do more of a pen and ink thing, but I just wanted to show, and I love this Batman page. He was a great guy for drawing Batman because it's all these weird, creepy, bizarre shadows. And then I bought this page several years ago. So this is Frank Robbins. So this is how he used, this is an unused page. But that's his lettering.
Wow.
So that's how he would pencil. That's as tight as he would pencil for himself. Right? And then he would go in and ink from that. I mean, look at this boat. So I think the more confidence you have, right, that also has a lot to do with, he knew, I'm going to make this guy black or that guy black, or, I'm going to make this boat black, or I'm going to make this wall. He did most of his drawing when he inked. He did most of his drawing when he inked. So he would pencil it just tight enough that he could show it to the editor. right? Or he could show, I mean, he wrote a lot of his stuff. So, and then when he was working at Marvel in DC, I don't think he always wrote the scripts. So he would probably pencil this, then he would send it in. He would get probably a Xerox back with the script. And since he often did his own lettering, he would, just go there and place it in. So this kind of gives people sort of a context of what, penciling used to be like. And again, I grew up in an era where this was sort of common, right? And, I love that era of drawing. I love this era of drawing because it allows you as an inker to go in to be able to participate. All my favorite inkers could draw. Now, maybe they didn't draw as dynamically as Gil Kane or as, atmospheric as Colin or Buscema, but I thought, well, here's another great John Buscema page, pencils from the Doc Savage comic he did. So it's there.
Yeah.
I think it's inked by Tony DiZuniga. And a great, if you can find it, you can probably find it on eBay. Great job. And he was really excited about doing this job, I can tell, at least for the first part of it, because he really liked that era of stuff. So again, if you can't draw, so that is mid 70s. This is what he was doing later, right? So his stuff got a lot looser later, especially depending upon the person he was working with. This is a great classic Buscema, really doing his Kirby right after Kirby left the Fantastic Four. So they brought him, Romita came on and then Buscema came on. So look, all those buildings are Greeked in.
Right.
Right. So that meant that you as the inker had to have really good drafting skills because you got to go make all those windows even. You got to keep perspective. He goes, here's the building. Hey, Joe Sinnott, you carry the ball. Right. So, when you're drawing 4 or 5 pages a day, which these guys did. Also, this ties into the grid that we did last. We were talking about the grid. This is all grid. Plenty of room for Stan to come in and go blah, 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 stretcho. Right. So if you're inking an artist like this, who's putting everything in, but look, I mean, just look at this police hat. You got to really know what a police hat looks like, right? You got to have a photo of it, so you got to have your file, right?
Yeah, your morgue. Yeah.
Yeah. So, again, this is the era that I came up in. So my natural aesthetic is to this type of work. This is the kind of work that I prefer. This is the era that I prefer. And there's a lot of energy in this kind of stuff. And it's there, but again, you got to go and you got to neaten up all those little lines on a Human Torch. That's where someone like Joe Sinnott, who could draw really, really well. And one of the reasons why they kept him on that book is that his finishes kept the book looking consistent.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really think about that now, but back in the day, that was really important. I mean, it was one of the reasons why they did stuff like when Jack Kirby drew Superman, they changed the way that he drew Superman's face. They had Murphy Anderson come in because Jack Kirby never, I mean, it didn't bother me, but he never drew Superman's S-curl the right way. He just like drew it the Jack Kirby way. And the companies used to be very, you know, it's like if you're looking at Garfield, but you don't do his ears right.
Right.
You know, that's very important on some books or some strips. So, you know, this is, you know, gives you an idea of when you have pencilers like this, whose chief job is to draw a very exciting story, the inker has to come in and add that final touch. Now, if you don't know how to draw a hand, right? Look at that hand. Great gesture, blah, 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 blah. If you don't know how to draw fingers, you don't know how to draw knuckles.
Right. He could be holding a slingshot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or as Al Williamson used to say, a fucking bunch of bananas. Right. So that is just to give you an idea of like, and so there were certain inkers that were considered finishers. And that meant that they drew well enough that you could take looser pencils looser than that, and finish off the drawing. So inking is drawing. It's not just tracing over the line. And even when I was inking somebody like Michael Golden, whose drawings, if you Google Michael Golden and you find pencil drawings of his, they're very perfect. There's no like sketchy quality to it. But you don't want to ink it so that it's dead. So line weight, all those things become very important. So I thought that what I would do is I'm going to ink, I think I'm going to ink this Batman page. Because I always wanted to ink Gene Colan's work. And I thought, well, since I did Batman, this might be a pretty interesting thing to ink his work. And like I said, one of the benefits for me, honestly, throughout my entire career, is that when I got to ink somebody else, I got to study. I got to sort of like, I got to wear their clothes. You know, I got to figure out like, okay. You know, so does anybody else have any questions?
Nope, let's go. I'm excited. They're just agog watching the screen.
So now one of the other the big difference here is that since I'm going to be inking this digitally, it does offer benefits, but it also makes things a little bit more difficult because it's not as easy to spin the page around. One of the things about inking traditionally is you're using your whole arm, your whole body, as I talked about before. When you're inking digitally, you're inking in a very, like, what? The size of a hamburger, you know, the size of a paperback book. That's basically the size of that image on my screen.
Right.
Right. And so even if I blow it up, right, I'm still in that same little spot, right? So when I ink traditionally, I'm all over the whole page. I can move my arm, right? When I'm inking on the tablet, I'm restricted. and I'm always relying upon basically 40 years of muscle memory. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I started trying to do comics when I was 13. Right? So I'm 64. That's a long time. That's decades of practice. And I used to sit there and take a sheet of paper and just practice making lines. I would have like the different kinds of pens and a brush, and I would like practice making lines like Joe Sinnott, or practice making lines like, you know, Neil Adams or whoever. And I would copy a drawing, or I would just fill a sheet practicing making lines, almost like you do drills for martial arts. You're doing your katas, right? Or when you're playing a piano or any other instrument you're trying to master, you have to do a lot of practice so that you gain proficiency with your tool.
Right.
So from the time I say I was 13 to those samples that I sent to George Freeman, there's got to be 4 or 5 years of practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many hours there were of practice. So I think I gained inking control over my line very early. My inking was ahead of my penciling. So one of the things I would do here is, it's a little bit different too, is that since I'm going to lighten the pencils here a little bit. It'll be a little bit easier for me to, and then since I'm in Clip Studio, I'm going to use the real G pen.
That's my jam.
Although I have to say, and that's the one I use most of the time when I'm working on any of the strips.
Not the G pen, the real G pen.
This is real G pen. You know, I don't know if it's a little bit more. Yeah, like there's the G pen.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll just try something. Let's just, you know, let's see what the G pen looks. So this is the G pen. All right, that's the G pen. And then this is the real G pen. So I don't know if the real G pen will be any different. See, so a lot of times what I find is, I'm going to change my resolution to 600 dpi. What I find is that you really don't notice the difference between the pens digitally and the way that you do traditionally, because my stylus is the same thing. So they say that's a G pen, but it's not the same. If I ink something with a 102 or a 101 or a Gillette, I mean, I have boxes of pens, and I know from experience what those pens are like. So it's always an imitation on when I'm doing it digitally. So one of the things I would probably do is I would look at, and again, this is not looking at the real thing. It's a little fuzzy, but I would probably go in. I gotta figure out that this is the other thing, is when you're inking digitally, you're sort of figuring, you know, I know in the real world what size everything is.
Mm-hmm.
When you're working digitally, you sort of have to sort of figure it out, right?
And you know that from just from experience, Mike? I remember I used to have to just tell myself, don't zoom in more than 800% ever, because then, no one will ever see it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to double check yourself, you're always going like in and out, right? So the first thing I would do with a guy like this, I think, is I would go through and figure out my contours. And all the guys who inked him, my favorite guys who inked him, because he always had this sort of cool but sort of wonky quality sometimes to his anatomy. So you have to sort of, one of my favorite inkers on him was Frank Giacoya. And so he would go in and he would, I think one of the things I noticed by him, about him inking Colin, was that what he would do is he would really concentrate on making the contours very clean and dynamic.
The chat was quiet and all through the house.
So you have to really think when you're inking a guy like this. This is really different than inking Brett, or Pete Klaus or something, because
JAMAR Nicholas.
Or even inking JAMAR Nicholas, because I actually have inked some JAMAR Nicholas.
Yeah, right. That stuff really sings when we work together. So, Mike, while you're doing this, can you talk a little bit about kind of like line selection? Because I can see somebody who is not used to inking things that have like blocked in shadows and shading. Like, maybe the amateur goes, well, am I just supposed to trace this? Or like, where do you find the confidence to just go, this needs to go here, and I'm not going to follow what he put?
Well, again, this is interpretation, right? So I'm relying upon my I know what an arm looks like in this position, right? I know what the anatomy looks like in this position. So I'm relying upon my own knowledge of anatomy, my own knowledge of light and dark, and I'm because this is kind of really kind of squirrely in here, right? You you kind of got the pec,
Yeah.
right? And you've got the ribs. But this is really sort of open to interpretation. You know, he's an impressionist. He's not a literalist, right? Somebody like Buscema is more of a literalist. You know, his or Michael Golden is. I mean, everything is there.
Right.
There's no question about line weight or lighting or anything like that, right? But you know, there is a lot on this. Like you can see, he's got this cast shadow of his belt, of the utility belt. But look at the utility belt and how this little bat tube or whatever the hell it is, whatever these things are. So on the one side, it's not the same as the other side.
Right.
That's the kind of thing that you have to come up with as the inker. A lot of times with those old pencilers, like you see like that hat that Buscema drew, and we know it's a police hat, but what's up with that emblem, you know, where they're moving fast. It's like the inker is going to add all that stuff.
Was it ever intimidating to be inking somebody like this, where you want to keep their flavor, but somehow find a way to resolve those incongruities, those weird?
Yeah, it is challenging. It is challenging, but again, that to me is part of what's fun about it, right?
And his work is so strong, you just know it's going to feel like Gene Colan no matter who inks it.
Right, but I mean, you can also have it look like Gene Colan and look like crap.
Right.
Does the chat have any questions for us while Mike's getting into this? And mind you, we're going to keep an eye on time. We will go a little bit longer than that because we just got started. But I might cut Steve loose a little early, Mike. He's not feeling great.
Okay. Yeah, no, I figured that, yeah.
I don't want to go.
But you know, this is funny because you know we talk as your three expert cartoonists on Wednesday. We talk about this stuff all the time, but to actually see us applying it is a whole different episode for some people. In the chat, Steve, I don't know if you saw it, D Fish mentioned she would love to see us all work on something and pass it around, so to speak, in an episode.
That'd be great. That'd be great. I think George Gant has a great question. Hey, yo, you drawing that?
George got jokes tonight. George's on timeout. Come on, George Gant. So, but yeah, this is, you know, also, you know, I would hate to say that we're in the wizard's parlor trying to impress each other with magic tricks, right? Because, you know, what are we, Steve? Our chat is lousy with cartoonists.
Brimming, thick with cartoonists.
With thick, I like that, with two C's. Oh, there's a question. Steve, you want to put this question on the screen real quick?
Absolutely. Excuse me. Figathan, I hope I pronounced that correctly, from YouTube asks, how do you challenge yourselves as artists? You want to tackle that one first, Jamar?
Yeah, you know what? I think maybe for me, which, you know, I think all of our answers will be a little different, is just try to do high levels of finish on things. You know, that kind of goes back into the question Steve asked me a little earlier about, you know, how will I approach inking? You know, so just being at the end of a project to go, oh wow, I never thought I would have done that to such a high degree. I'm very proud of myself. You know, every time you're at the table, I feel like you're trying to challenge yourself. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be prompts, or it doesn't have to be like entering a contest or something. It's just trying to draw the best back on Batman that I can. Steve, what about you?
How to challenge myself. I feel like I try to do that with every page. I want to beat what I did before. I mean, people have said you're only as good as your last page. You know, I feel like there's a bit of truth to that.
What have you done for me lately, Steve Conley?
Yeah. And there are shortcuts that I know I can take pretty easily. Like in a comic strip, a classic is one panel is silhouetted, and that can be a crutch where I know that of these 4 panels, 5 panels, I can silhouette the figures in one of the panels, and my characters are designed to have clear silhouettes, so they're obviously you can tell who the characters are from the silhouette. So it's easy for me to get away with that, and that does leave more room for, you know, dumb jokes in the word balloons, things like that. But getting away from that, moving the camera is how I challenge myself. I have a tendency to treat things like a play, treat things as a flat, you know, that you're viewing it from a stage play where you're viewing a stage.
The 180 rule.
Yeah. And also respecting that, not moving the camera too much. But I do like, there's the strip I'm working on now. The camera has moved up. He's climbing up a circular stair. The main character is climbing up a circular staircase. And so there is accentuated foreshortening. And I just had that scene in my head, and it's atypical for my comic strip. But, you know, so there's things like that, just kind of leaning into it whenever I can. And trying to, also with 300 episodes, trying to mix things up. You kind of, if I am just doing the same thing week after week, I think people get bored.
I'm going to Mike, since Mike's concentrating. Mike, I'm going to ask you a question that has to do with the process while you're going.
Sure.
Crossbones Flag 40, what up, Crossbones, says, how do you delineate between 2 solid black areas next to each other? Like with the thigh and the inside of the cape with the Batman piece you're working
with?
That's a good question.
See, you know, I'm having to really think. I'm trying to make it look like his stuff without, you know, like right now, and since I'm doing this on the fly, right? Like, I think one of the things is this drawing has a lot of energy, but it also has a lot of distortion. And a lot of, so I feel like I have to go back and make this arm bigger than be the same as that. So some things you're trying to go like, this is, the main thing to me is like to keep the inking. Like if I'm inking this cape, I want the cape to be, the rendering to be consistent in the same direction. Even if he didn't always do it that way, it adds a solidity to it. That's what I see. Like, not by doing that, it adds a solidity to it. You feel like it's the same. If you start going all these different ways with the inking, you know, again, and he really makes you think, because again, it's cool, but when I turn off his pencil layer, that's what you see.
Right.
His pencils are gone. Right. So this is really different. It's safer because whatever I don't like, or you can like draw right through a form, you know. One of the other things I do is I have Can you see my little picture?
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Your triangle.
I have a little triangle, right? So now I could rule this line by hand, but I put my little triangle on the.
I love that approach to digital stuff. Like you're still using your tools, just
Yeah.
putting it right on there.
Right. So
Like, yeah.
it doesn't make it like if I do it, I can use the line tool. It's dead.
Right.
I don't like dead lines.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And if I'm trying to make it look like the artists that I love,
JAMAR Nicholas.
Nicholas. You gotta do it. And also, Mike, to answer the question from Crossbones. Also, the bar he's holding on to is breaking up the blacks. Also, so that's a design thing, right?
well, what you have to decide when you're doing this, what you have to decide or think about is like how much of this back here is going to be solid black, and how much of it is going to be textural. And he offers you a lot of opportunities to interpret things. You know, so I'm having to think about this in a way that I would not if I was, again, I'm also, you know, I'm reducing this stuff down, right?
Right.
So yeah, you know, you have to really think about
Steve, are you up to asking Darren's question? I don't think I know what he's asking.
somebody has a question.
Yeah, we're working on it. Oh, what was that? Hold on, you guys. George Gant asks, well, says real quick, using a triangle for the lines is pure genius, Mike Manley. I use the pen tool plus shift to keep them from looking good, but that doesn't account for pin pressure when you do so. Yes.
Yeah, to me, it's all about keeping it. I'm all old school, so my whole aesthetic is old school. Now, again, one of the things about working digitally is it makes everything the same. It's very consistent, but I don't want it to be consistent because then it'll look dead, right? So here's a good example. Here's his cape. And there's a shadow. So at some point, I'm going to have the shadow and I'm going to have the cape. And do I want the cape? How do I want that cape to blend in the shadow? So if I make this cape all black, my thinking now. Again, to me, that's one of the fun things about inking a guy like Colin is that you have to think about that kind of stuff, right?
We got a question, Mike. Where'd it go? Darren Huddy 7776 from YouTube. Do you consciously think of this process as a type of notan while you're working?
No, I'm not thinking about notan. What I'm thinking about is I've got his interpretation of black and white. This is a black on a black. So if this is a solid black on a solid black, well then it would make no sense, right? So what I have to do is figure out a way of working. This is where Tom Palmer was so good. A way of interpreting how to merge one black into another.
I'd like to thank everybody hanging out with us tonight. We've got a full house. And everybody's rapt attention. Thank you for your questions, you guys.
So how does the speed you're working, Mike, compare to when you're got doing a gig for DC or Marvel?
Probably. I think sometimes digitally is a little faster because you don't have to wait for anything to dry.
And a Batman piece you would absolutely do traditionally, so you have the art to sell.
Yeah, it's nice to have art to sell. Although I have completely switched digitally to digital on both of the strips. Although I'm sure I could probably sell more Phantom stuff because there are some people that really like the stuff. But I mean, I'm very practical. You know, digital is faster.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about speed.
And Micah, you're doing a fantastic job, especially because you're not turning the page at all. You're just hitting it all head on. And I'm sure you're controlling your arm and wrist.
Yeah, it's muscle memory. Like I was saying, you know, one of the main things about working this way is that I'm relying upon my years of very, you know, it's like Steve does karate. And so when I was doing karate, I only did it for, I don't know, maybe like not even 6 months, maybe. But you have your basic moves, and all your other moves are made out of those basic moves. So you can't do anything complex if you can't do something simple.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. It's muscle memory. Like, you know exactly when you put your fist out, you do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is the same thing, right? I mean, I've probably, you know, I'd done like 10,000 hours by the time I was 20. It's just doing stuff like this, right? It's the only way, you know. It's like people talk about, you know, people being geniuses and all that stuff. You know, I think really what it is you just have to be willing to devote yourself and spend the time. And if you're willing to devote yourself and spend your time constructively, I mean, studying, you know, you can get skill, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, like, some of this stuff, I mean, I'm using all pen.
Right.
But in the real world, some of the stuff would be
The real world, I love it.
the meat world. Some of the stuff would be pen. Some of the stuff would be brush. Right. So what digital does offer me is the ability to draw something and go over it. Right. I don't have to use white out. Right. Now, the other thing I would probably do here, this is just I think his head looks a little small.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to ask, what amount of liberties do you feel like you can take?
I feel like it can take any liberty as long as it makes it better. Right.
Yep.
Now, in the old days, you would send this in, and the editor goes, "Dude, this dude's fucking head is dinky." They would go and have somebody stat it, blow it up, and paste it on, or they would have somebody in the art department. Make it bigger, right? So that to me, which means that if his head is there, the shadow being behind him is also going to be bigger, right? That looks better. Right? Because this is sort of like a real high contrast thing.
I was saying a little while ago, you guys, because I'm the hype man for this show. You tell me another live YouTube video scope program with 3 expert cartoonists with smiley angelic countenances giving you this kind of content every week. Go ahead, I'll wait. So I'm just saying, you look on your screen and you see that thumb. Will you please hit the like button? I'm going to turn this into a Pavlovian reflex. We come on the screen, you hit the like button. That's how this is going to work in the future. Thank you. And Steve, I'm going to flush you soon because you gotta go do something about.
I appreciate that. The power of Dayquil is ebbing.
You need to go take the NyQuil now.
There's only so much ginger tea in the world.
You switched from Dayquil to NyQuil. I love it. Well, we're gonna go into overtime. I think we're gonna end at 10, so Mike can put a little more time into finishing this panel. Steve, we love you the most. Go on into that dark night and take care of yourself, please.
Yeah, man.
Kirby hands forever.
Yep, Kirby hands in advance, gentlemen. I'll be watching, like everyone else, and I'll be clicking like, maybe even love.
Yeah, right. Hit the love button.
See y'all next week.
All right, peace out.
See ya. Feel better, man.
Yo, Mike, it's you and me again, like old times.
Just like old times.
Just like old times. So, again, the chat is showing a lot of love. This is great, and I'm glad that we could bring this to you. Let me see if I missed any questions while we were talking. Oh, our good buddy Tristan. Tristan says from YouTube, I thought for sure, Mike, you'd be inking that Karloff piece you posted on Instagram today. But this is also cool.
Oh, the Karloff piece? Yeah, that was from right after high school. No, I wanted to ink like a fun page like this.
So I think for some of the people in the chat who didn't ask, and I'm just kind of filling in the blanks, I'm good with that. Sometimes when you see penciled work, you might see side of the pencil, kind of like I see some of that in the back, trying to, getting those darks in the background there. Or sometimes you might see the X, or my favorite, BWS, black with stars. Now, Mike, when you were penciling yourself, did you figure out what kind of language you were going to use for filling in blacks? You just filled the blacks in. You weren't like putting little notes in there, right? You're not dropping X's.
It would depend upon who was, if I was inking my work or if somebody else was inking my work.
You can answer any way you'd like.
Right? So if like Ricardo Villagrán was inking my work, I could do really loose stuff because he drew so well. He was going to sort of do it in his own style anyway. Right? So it would sort of be like, it wouldn't be worth it to pencil too tightly because then you don't get the benefit of his ability to interpret stuff. Also, I have to keep adjusting my.
So, speaking about kind of digital hacks, because you talked about putting your triangle directly on your screen. How about, because I've seen one of your other tactics, I think when you were drawing on a smaller tablet, I can't really remember, but you had kind of affixed it to your lapboard.
And when I was first doing it, I had to figure out how I wanted to see, like his hands are kind of right. So I have to put my interpretation of that hand in. Right? Like, and he doesn't even draw all of his little flanges, right?
Yeah.
So again, he really offers you a lot of challenges as an inker, because if you can't really draw a hand, you're going to have a hard time with his stuff. And I'm trying to do like a Gene Colan hand, not a Mike Manley hand.
That's coming together.
Yep. When you first start out, it's kind of like, what the?
Right.
But
it takes time.
You also have to be patient when you ink. I find inking very meditative. It's like a very, it's a very, very you can like just sort of chill and ink.
I love this kind of stuff because it's not the same as like, I always say like, you watch some other comic book artist doing a live stream and they're just like drawing a Wolverine face and the Guitar Hero chats on the side. Like there's not really a conversation about the work. It's like draw Deadpool. You know what I mean? Like there's no nuance of the craft there. Like I just drew Deadpool.
Yeah, and again, my aesthetic would be like if I was inking this, it the actual real pencils,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I it would it would be easier in some ways. Uh, it would be more difficult in other ways because you can't like it's so easy to correct something digitally.
Yeah. Oh, Mike, I'm going to leave you alone for a second. I got to do something with the dog here, but I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Just talk to the room. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Oh, hold on. I'll leave you with this. Crossbones says, "Man, inking is the most nerve-wracking experience I've ever had in art. It's so hard to find basic standard advice for it."
I you know
I'll be
I
right back, Mike.
I I think that depends upon what type of inking that you are talking about, right? If you're talking about inking a comic page in a like this is sort of what I consider like the classic style, or you're trying to ink like you know uh, Jim Lee, or you're trying to ink 80s era John Byrne, inked by Terry Austin. Ooh, ooh, there's always a little hole. The other nice thing is when you're doing stuff digitally, you can use the paint bucket. So now we got the most of Batman's figure in, and so we've got these shadows back here, right? And so I think these shadows should be
I'm back. I'm back.
feathered out.
There's a lot of new people in the chat, guys. Thanks so much. We'd love to know where you guys all came from. I think we have a lot of lurkers, but I always love when the chat talks in the chat. It just enriches what we do here.
And I love doing stuff like this because I think the only way really to learn, you can watch me do this, but you can actually do exactly the same thing I'm doing here. You can go find some copies of some pencils of some artists that you like and do this. I used to do this all the time back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
I would do it on tracing paper,
Yeah.
which is a pain in the ass. I would try to find like heavyweight tracing paper,
Yeah.
and then I would try to find Xeroxes, and then I would put the Xerox under the tracing paper, and I would ink.
That's that. Oh, I love that shadow in the back. Tristan asked, "Could you pull back for a minute so we can kind of see the panel?" Oh, wow. And it's also there's something like Steve was saying about the danger of zooming into close because then you start noodling and it all kind of gets closed up. That's all about that world from doing comic strips.
Right. Well, one of the big things that you learn the hard way when you start is that everything you do, if you're working original size, is reduced 65%.
Mm-hmm.
So you can think, oh, that's really bold.
Mm-hmm.
And then you actually see it, and it's not that bold. Once you see it reproduced, you see it colored. I mean, the one of the things that I don't often like about modern comics is that the color competes with the inking. It actually overpowers the inking,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
They like sometimes the colors will come in and render.
Right. And I love that you're just building on this.
Like I said, for me, inking is very relaxing. Although I'm having to really,
Yeah.
I'm having to think a lot on this.
Yeah. And you're talking. There's a lot going on at this.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Traditionally, I wouldn't be trying to explain.
right.
Well, I got my teacher brain on, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, like leaving those little cracks in there, kind of
Mm-hmm.
activate that space.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I've got to.
And one of the, I guess, the things that we have that can be useful working digitally, especially in Clip. Shout out to our friends at Graphics League. We got to get our Clip Studio paint sponsorship back. Is that you could paint bucket that black, but you're going for texture, right in here, not just for fills.
Yes, I'm going for texture because I think that's what he was going for.
Right. In some of my old teaching workshops when I taught comics, especially, I had a lot of fun with the high school kids because you can kind of really put some long-term thinking into them. The first week of our class, they never drew anything. I made them just rule out 11 by 17 pages until they got sick of it. They're like, "What was I going to draw?" Like, you got to learn how to make a page first. Then you work on your lines, and like there's like the formula of it, and also it's not all about making Wolverine jump out a window. It's like you said earlier, just like practicing doing hatching and then cross hatching and then doing your thick and thins over and over and over on a scrap piece of paper, like learning how to control your tools. It's so important. People being deep in the chat, Mike. Listen to this. Our new buddy Darren says, "Is this approach to inking a descendant of the academic realist approach, as shown in the work of Hal Foster and Loomis, for example, or is it a modern interpretation only?" Mike Manley. We're going to school.
Well, everything is descended from Foster because he was the first guy to try to do it. And also, when you're doing pen and ink, there's all the classic pen and ink illustrators like Charles Dana Gibson and that whole school. There's tons of people. So mostly I'm aware of all that, right? I'm aware of all that's in my brain.
Yeah, it's in there. Yeah. But after a decades-long career, like you said, a lot of his muscle memory and just how the construction of a comic and how to complete things too. So I guess it's almost kind of like like your Windows operating system of how you make comics. It's just running in the background. I'm sure you're not thinking about theory every 5 seconds, but it all informs your lines too.
Well, there's rendering. There's the Watson Guptill rendering in pen and ink.
Mm-hmm.
When you start studying pen and ink, inking, there's all these great masters that you can look at, and each one is doing a variation on, some kind of rendering. So if you study that, you might say, oh, I like Gibson, or I like Flagg, or I like John O'Neill, or I like Frazetta, or I like, there's all the great Filipino artists like Alfredo Alcala and all those guys who were great at doing pen and ink. They were all brush, like Nestor Redondo and all those guys.
Yeah, Nestor's fantastic. Yeah.
Right? Or Alex Nino, another favorite of mine.
And guys, for people who are watching the chat, who love the personalities, right? You love JAMAR Nicholas, as you should. Stone Cold and Monsignor Mike Manley. I do hope, dear viewers, that you're picking up our work too, right? Not only are we expert cartoonists and educators, we also are we have stuff on the shelves or at your thing. I hope you're picking the stuff up. I would love a complete Darkhawk run. Sometimes I hunt that out on eBay, Mike. I don't pull the trigger because I want somebody else to get it. But you can get to study Mike's stuff up close if you go buy some of his work.
Or just read, you can read
read
Judd and Phantom every day in Comics Kingdom.
I would love to know how many of our viewers actually read your strips in or online or in their local paper. I think there's a weird little disconnect between seeing us on here every Wednesday and then going, oh, right, those guys are real who are doing work out in the world. Let me go check it out.
I actually think that most people who like comics don't care about the comic strip stuff. It's not. It's most of the people who like my comic stuff never going to read my comic strip stuff because they're not interested in soap operas. They're really interested in, Marvel and DC and continuity. There are some people that like everything, but I think that that's more of an acquired taste with some people. They don't really, they like the, what Marvel and DC, they like comic books, not comic strips. There is some crossover, but I think it tends to be you guys who are artists. Exactly, Cosmo.
The dog agrees. See, look, Tristan gets it. I'm 100% getting the Leon book, and I've now been glued to the Phantom. Yeah, you're doing some magnificent work in both of those strips, Mike.
Why, thank you. It's a challenge, and I like doing different things. So.
Yeah, for some reason I get stuck on that a lot, but I think it's really important that people kind of separate all the stuff that we do and seeing us on the screen every week and a couple of places, to be honest, and just remember that these talking heads are working cartoonists, right? Go support.
Some little hole.
Tristan says, oh, you said that, I'm sorry. He says something else. Yes, it's very important. Thank you. And Cooper 6144 says, fascinating broadcast, guys. Really enjoying the process and the conversation. Thank you, Cooper. I appreciate that. Like and subscribe. I love the community that we're building. This live cast has been going on for six years, Mike? How long have we been doing this?
Yeah, I think this is our 6th year. Yeah.
That's ridiculous. We have a lot of content. If you subscribe to the channel, you get to go watch it all right now. Well, after we're finished, but right now. Superstar guests. Some of my favorite episodes are when it's just your 3 expert cartoonists just kicking it. But there's something here for everyone. And if you're a student of cartooning, you will get your money's worth. It is my pleasure to be your first co-host. So there's an interesting question here, Mike. Figathin says, "What media spoke to you the most, Mike?"
Well, obviously pen and ink, because that's doing comics. That's the thing that I mean, I love watercolor, and I love oil paint. You guys can go to michaelcolemanley.com and see all my oil paintings.
Mm-hmm. Magnificent painter. So Darren says, Mike, this is more of a statement. Maybe you can speak on it. I'm keen to make a start on my own comics, just using 1 panel, 2 panel, and 3 panel comics, just so I can make a start and not get bogged down in story. I will also say the story is very important. I know, the magic of comic creating is like storytelling, marrying words and pictures. There's a lot to drink in all at one time. I'd like to say that a great way to sharpen your sword is journal comics. I love journal comics. It helps your ideas of storytelling and also observation, and also telling little short bite-sized pieces of story, and also sharpening your art. But I spoke all over that. Mike, what did you think about this 1 panel, 2 panel, 3 panel thing that Darren said?
I mean, if that's how you want to, I don't think there's any wrong way. I think it's just what is it that you're. The main thing is just to be consistent and to do a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
You can do 1 panel, 2 panel, 10 panel. I mean, if you want to create stuff that people are going to read, like you want to create stories, people like to read stories. So you can start out doing like quick little bits with your short stories. I think short story, when I teach my comic book class, I have people basically start their stuff off based on a nursery rhyme. Jack and Jill, because it's a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you know what? Tristan asked us last week, and I think you answered this, or maybe we didn't get to it, but I'll put it here. Tristan says, with the Phantom heading into public domain, any thoughts on going full 20-second Phantom as a sign off? I think you answered that, but you want to touch on that again? Like, you're not going anywhere.
I'm not sure I understand what the question is. Since the Phantom is entering public domain, are we going to kill the Phantom off, or?
I think he's asking about, because these are the adventures of the 21st Phantom.
Right.
Right. Are you guys going to do the 22nd?
I don't know if we will do the 22nd Phantom, because honestly, that's up to King Features.
Right.
It's really not up to us.
Right.
Right. It's really up to King Features. If they wanted us to do the new adventures of the Phantom, I'm sure we could. But the one thing about strips is they don't tend to make big decisions like that, because every time someone does something with the character like that, there's all this like merchandise, and it used to be that people were afraid to make any changes, because when you made a change, it was an opportunity for the the newspaper to drop the strip. A new artist dropped a strip. New writer dropped a strip. So that's why sometimes for years people would do a strip and they would be a ghost because they didn't want to let the papers know that there was a new person, right?
Mm-hmm. All right, we're going to start wrapping up, you guys, and now the question faucet has opened. So I'm going to try to. We'll do a couple more of these while Mike's kind of wrapping up this Batman. Darren says, "What size page dimensions is best for using 9-panel grids?" Ooh, 9-panel. Farsha's work was a broadsheet, but how can a 9-panel layout work in modern formats?
I don't think it has. I mean, to me, the main thing is everything is based upon if you're drawing. Are you drawing it for a comic book, like a traditional Marvel or DC comic book? If you're doing that, then you're going to be working at the 10 by 15. If you're doing something for a graphic novel, then you can completely do something as a whatever, the graphic novel size is not the same as a comic book. There's a little bit more. Like the Leon is not the same as a Marvel and DC book, right?
Right. I think it's a little smaller.
Yeah. So it just really has to do with where you want your work to appear.
Mm-hmm. It's a good question, though. And also 9-panel storytelling is really dense. So, I would, not that you asked, but I would ask yourself, why are you feeling like you want to work under those conditions? Yeah.
I mean, most of the kid lit stuff, it depends upon the age of your,
mm-hmm.
I think the age of your readership.
Mm-hmm.
They want bigger panels and they don't want a lot of words. Like when you look at a kid's book, the amount of words in a kid's book really fluctuates based upon
mm-hmm.
the age. They actually have, I think they actually have a word count, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, that's all that stuff factors into the storytelling you're doing. If you're just doing it to do it because you want to stretch yourself, go for it. But also depending on, say, if you got a book deal and you're working with a publisher, the creative director will tell you what your format is, and that's kind of that. Like here's your Photoshop template. We work at this. It needs to be. Here's your bleed. See you in a year.
Right. My advice is just to do the stories and not to worry about that. Don't worry about if you're going to do something that somebody's going to read as a comic book. You can do it in a 9-panel grid. That's the kind of storytelling you're doing. You look at a lot of those early Marvels. You look at the early issues of Spider-Man, Fantastic Four. Ditko was a big fan of the 9-panel grid.
Mm-hmm. That looks good, Mike. Let's put a button on it. Go home. Steve Conley from the Ether says, long time listener, first time caller, big fan. Hey, Steve Conley, go to bed.
So there you go. There's the pencils. There's the inks.
You did it. I love it. Look at that. Our expert room of cartoonists were lousy with them. The chat, George Gant says, make the comic first, then figure out how to do so afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the tricks that people who start out get caught up in is stuff like that.
Right.
Like they get caught up in like these things that actually don't have anything to do in the end with whether anyone is actually going to be reading your story or not.
Mm-hmm.
No one is going to be reading. No, I don't care whether you're drawing a grid or you vary the page. I just care about whether the drawing looks good, number one. And if I'm reading this, I can look at a comic that's beautifully drawn, even if the story is subpar. I, however, cannot read a comic book if I don't like the art.
Word up.
I'm never going to read it. You know, I like comics because I like art, right? If I don't like the art, I'm not going to read it. So you have to sort of decide. I think what's most important is the doing. It's the doing of making your comic. That to me is the most important thing is the doing.
There was this one YouTuber that I watched and listened to. It was kind of like a new age psychiatrist who has, you know, a whole network of YouTube things. He had a really great thing to say. He said there's a lot of people that feel like they're moving forward because they watch my content and they listen to my essays every week on my podcast. But at the end of the day, you just watch my podcast. You haven't applied it to your own life. So, you know,
it's true.
Make sure you're not falling into that trap. You know,
it's really about the doing. It's like, you know, it's just like if you want to play the guitar, you got to play the guitar. You got to play the guitar every day. If you don't play the guitar every day, you know, my brother teaches guitar.
mm-hmm.
You know, you have kids that come in and they all want to play the guitar, but then the weeks between, when they go home, do they practice? No.
Right. Right.
So to me, it's really all about the doing.
All right, Mike, I think we're going to end it there. I'm not exactly sure if you want to do a part 2 to this or what we're doing next week, but this was very engaging. Can we take another shot at that Batman panel before we head out? I got to lock the door here. Oh, that's fantastic. Thought you didn't when you did. That looks great, man.
Thanks. Yeah. You know, you're going pretty quick, so.
Yeah. And maybe we'll do, yes, Rudy, how are you? It says, see one, do one, teach one. I love it. Some nice closing words here. George Gant, read Beware of Toddler. Far too many aspiring creators fall into the trap of worrying about the specifics of making comics that they forget to actually make the comics.
Yeah, make it. That's the most important thing because, you know, I started at 13. I started getting professional work when I was 23. You're going to make a lot of bad comics before you make good comics. It's the same thing any of my old painter teachers would say. You're going to make 300 bad paintings before you make a good painting, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe you'll be fortunate and you'll only have to make 200 or 150. But everybody is different. This is not like, learning to bake a cake or something, where there's like always very consistent steps to like beating eggs or following a recipe. You're going to have your own personal recipe, but the only way you can figure out what your personal recipe is by doing it.
I love it. And Noah's half the battle. All right. Thank you so much. All right. So the jokesters in the chat. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us. At one point at the end of the pandemic, this was the Mike and JN show, right? We were just kind of up on your video scope twice a week.
Yeah, we did a lot. Disappeared.
Getting you guys through the pandemic, I'm not going to let you forget it. We're the lifeline, right? And I'm glad to see that we're still going strong. Steve Conley is a magnificent third to this act. And, I don't ever want people to forget that we're here to, like Mike said earlier, to pay it forward. Yeah. So thank you so much for hanging out with us. Please spread the gospel of Pencil to Pencil in this channel with your constituents. Don't keep it to yourself. Don't hide it. Divide it. And we will be back next week, next Wednesday, same bad time, same bad channel. Mike, any last words before we get out of here?
I would say go. You can go read my Facebook post about my crit from George Freeman. But I would encourage everybody to do exactly what I did here. You can do it digitally like I did, or you can you can convert it to non-photo blue, and you can run it through you can run your piece of comic book paper through, and you can do it traditional. All my digital skills come from my 40 years of traditional skills. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to imitate digitally what I would do if I was inking that on an actual sheet of paper. Mm-hmm. But I encourage everybody, there's a favorite penciler or favorite artist that you like, just doing that one panel by Gene Colan, I kind of got in his head a little bit. I kind of got into his world, his thinking. And then I had to try to interpret that. How am I going to meet that? Now I might ink that again, ink it a little bit different, because I'm trying to jam it into this format. But when you were inking a monthly comic, you rarely had 2 weeks to ink a book. Mm-hmm. There are many times where I would ink. I think my record, I inked 7 pages in one day. So I was inking a page like every couple hours.
Every couple hours, yeah.
Yeah. Now it depends upon who you're inking, right? But this is the way to learn, There are no special tricks or techniques or whatever, We live in a time where you can go to Heritage or comic art fans. People have uploaded tons of high quality images to study. You find copies of pencils, download them, print them out, ink them digitally, inking traditionally. I'm always about just learning to ink traditionally, because you really know what the tool is. You know the difference between a 108 and a 107, or any of the millions of Japanese pens, or a brush pen versus Raphael. That's how you build skill. There's only one way to build skill. That's to consistently build skill. And you would be surprised if you did what I did here. 2 hours a day in a month.
2 hours.
2 hours a day in a month. You will have really gained skill.
2 hours, but Better Call Saul is on.
Yeah, you can put it on, and there's no shortcut to skill. No shortcut to skill. So if we don't have a guest next week, I could always pick another page or something.
Or maybe we'll do the thing that D-Fish suggested, that we take one kind of image and then we interpret it in our own inking style.
That's true. We could pick one page and everybody can ink it.
That'd be cool. 2 hours. All right, guys, that's it. I'm calling it. I got to take my dog out. Guys, you've been watching Pencil to Pencil. Thank you so much for giving us your eyeballs. Please like and subscribe to this channel so we can keep growing. Share alike. Thank you so much. Guys, we are in the end times. We're in the end game, but I behoove you as we go into that cold and dark night to make sure you wash those Kirby hands. Oh, look at that. Oh, it's perfect. I love it. We need to make a Kirby hand shirt.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. Good night.